everybody and welcome to OBS Obsessed. My name's John Lacey and today on the show we're going to be talking all about OBS Studio Transitions. So we're going to be talking about cuts and fades and things that may be even a little bit more elaborate than that. So we are going out live to all the various places. Let me know if you are watching live in the chat. Say hi. And I'm forever trying to make this thing happen, and I don't know if I still need to make this thing happen on this show, but hashtag Team Live, if you're watching live, would be awesome to see in the chat. So today we're going to talk about OBS transitions. So transitions are essentially the things that happen between OBS scenes. So that could be a simple cut or fade. That could be quite elaborate in terms of actually rearranging different objects in the frames. It can be really subtle and it can be really explosive. So we're going to be digging into a lot of that today, and we're just going to see some of the possibilities. I guess, first of all, I want to say it's always a good idea to play with these things, but also when you come to actually using them for your production, make sure you use them with a little bit of restraint. Like, you don't want everything flashing and all the lights going and all the things all the time. That can be extremely annoying. I think I need to click one extra button just to make sure that the chat's coming through and I can see it, but there we go. Hopefully that's working now. All right, brilliant. So I did want to mention too, I do have this this newsletter article over at on LinkedIn of all places. Let me just show you this. So this is the OBS Obsessed newsletter. You can check this out if you go to johnlacey.com/OBS news. And essentially, we're going to talk about how we can do these things. There's a whole bunch of links to the things I'll be talking about in here as well. And I'll try to include that one in the chat as well at some points. But let's actually go into OBS. I've got another portable version running, so let's check that out over here. So first of all, in terms of transitions, the things you actually want to be looking for is the scene transitions doc. So if you're not seeing that, first of all, make sure you go to docs and make sure you find that one from the list. If you click it off and it disappears, you can always bring that back in by going to docs and scene transitions. We can also drag and move this around and it will dock into different places within the interface. So if you want to put it somewhere else, you certainly can. For our purposes today, I'm probably just going to leave it where it is. I think that'll work just nicely. But we are going to also just check out these options. So, and I guess the other thing I will mention, I'm not going to worry about the audio mixer much today in this second portable version of OBS that I'm demonstrating in, but just note that it's sort of tabbed underneath there. So we could probably bring that out as its own thing, but I think for the moment that's totally fine. Although what I might do, I might even see if I can just make this a little bit smaller just so you can see the whole thing. Okay, brilliant. So if we go to our transitions, by default, these are the two that you'll see. You'll see cut and fade. And fade is, it sort of fades between our scenes. So if I click on the second one or the third one or the fourth one, you'll see that that's a little feed, a little transition of a fade nature. We can actually make this longer or shorter, and the duration is described here in milliseconds. If I go, I don't know, 1,000 milliseconds, that'll be a little bit slower and a little bit more subtle. And especially if you're doing some sort of animated backgrounds, that can be really, really nifty as well. So we can make that really long or we can make that really short. And I guess the only thing to keep in mind is if you do make it really, really short, people probably won't even notice that it's happening. It's very, very gradual there. So let's just go back to the 300 milliseconds duration, which is the default there. And I think, honestly, that's very elegant. That actually will work a lot of the time. So if that is something that you want to experiment with and use. Okay, I can see that I've got chat comments over in Restream, but I'm not seeing them in OBS, which is extremely annoying. Just give me 1 second to make sure that okay, I didn't select that on properly. Let me try that again. So hello to Saeed and Jerry, who are watching both on LinkedIn today. So hopefully I'll see your future comments now that I've actually clicked that button correctly. All right, so we've got the fade and we've got the cut. And the cut is almost a lack of transition. It'll just go from one thing to another. So if I go to scene A, scene B, you know, we're just seeing them. There's nothing terribly exciting happening there at all. So That can be useful at times too, but I love the fade. I think that's so elegant. But we do have other options as well, and I want to talk about those today. And let me just see if I can trigger a test comment just to make sure that this is definitely working in the back end now. Okay, it should be working now. Cool. So again, hello to Saeed and Jerry. Thanks for joining me. So we're talking about scene transitions in OBS, and like I said, out of the box, you'll see these two, fade and cuts. They're very simple. Fade is very elegant. You can adjust the duration, but if you wanted something a little bit more exciting, we do have other options, and the other options will depend a little bit on what you've got installed, because a couple of the ones that you'll see on my screen are actually technically the result of plugins. So we've got Move, we've got Doom and Doom Faithful, which all three of those are plugins, and I will talk about them and show you those later. But the ones that you sort of expect to see in OBS if you've just got a new installation are Swipe, Slide, Stinger, Fade to Color, and Luma White. So if we wanted to add any of those to our repertoire, because right now we only have fade and cut, what we want to do in the Scene Transitions dock is click on the Add Configuration Transition option, this little plus sign here, and then we'll go to, say, Swipe, for example. We can give this a name, and for most of these, I'd probably leave this as the default, but there will be a few where it will be meaningful for us to actually name these properly. And we'll go click OK, and then we've got the direction that this can swipe in. So it can go left, right, up and down. And the great thing about this is we have this beautiful preview transition option. So if I click on this, we'll see what happens. So swipe to the left, swipe to the right, swipe up, and swipe down. So I might even go swipe right in this case. And the thing about this is once we've selected an option from the scene transition, this will be applied to all our transitions, unless we do something different. And I'll talk about those other different things that we can do in just a moment. But essentially with this swipe that I've just added, if I click on that, now things are swiping to the right. And that's brilliant. We can always go into the properties and actually change that later on. So if we want to change that maybe to left or up or down, we've got that option there as well. But let's have a look at some of the other ones that we've got here. So we can add another one, and this time we'll go slide. Slide and swipe are very, very similar. I genuinely am not sure that I can tell the difference. But essentially we've got those left, right, up and down options again. So you could pick one that you liked, and in this case I'll go OK, and now slide is our option, and we're going to slide down, and we've got those there. So again, those two, they're interesting, but they're not, I don't know, to my eye, I'm not really seeing a lot of difference between those. There's probably really subtle animation, maybe in terms of the curves is different, but I genuinely don't really notice a difference. But they're both there. They're both installed by default as part of your OBS installation, so they're there to use. We've got fade to color. So fade to color is it's basically just fades to a color, as the name suggests. So essentially we've got scene A, then we'll go to scene B, but there'll be a solid color in between. So let me just pick a color from random. This bright orange can be our example today. We can preview the transition here. You'll see that it goes A, flash of color, and then B. And again, I can show you that one there. Again, I don't know that I love that flashing, so I probably use that rarely. And again, if you wanted to sort of increase the duration of that one, it'd probably be a little bit more subtle. There we go. I like that more. I think that works really well. Okay, cool. All right, awesome. So the great thing about this is I am actually now seeing comments. So hello, Jerry. Thanks for the applause. All right. So those ones, they're very simple. And again, a lot of this is how we're going to put it together ultimately, because you don't really want the same transition all the time. And I will show you some options to override those and create some variations thereof. But let's go to the plus sign again. We've got Luma Wipe, which Luma Wipe is amazing because it has so many options buried in here. And again, some of these are quite simple, but let me just click on this this option, which is under the image menu. We've got, I don't know, I tried to summarize these in the article during the week, but there's a whole bunch of different ones. So we've got things like barn doors. So if I preview that one, you'll see that it sort of opens from the middle like a door. We've got the box, which sort of comes in from one corner. And again, there are all different types of starting and ending points for some of those ones. We've got the checkerboard small, which is actually, I kind of like that. That's quite a fun one. In fact, I'm going to just click OK. And if we go between our thumbnails that I've got installed here, like some of them, a lot of these do have a lot of black in them. So there's not a lot of, like you'll only see that transition in certain places. But let's go back into our properties. So we've got the checkerboard small, we've got circles. So let's preview that one. That's kind of cool. It's sort of radiating circle shapes. And again, I'm curious to see what that looks like with my video thumbnails. That could be really cool. In fact, I might just put the duration back to 300. Make it a little bit faster. So again, it kind of, like, in some ways you probably want to, you know, you want to think about having enough contrast that these are more visible than they are in my particular example, but I literally just threw a few video thumbnails in here that all look basically the same because they're branded in the same way. All right, Saeed is saying something in the chat. So slide is both scenes move simultaneously. Okay, cool. And then he goes on to say, wipe, only the top scene moves. The one you switch to is static. Okay, cool. That's good to know. Thank you, Saeed. Like I said, a little subtle for my purposes, but it's good to know that that is the difference. Let's go back into our properties for Luna Wipe. So we had the circles. We've got a clock, which I'm guessing does that. Yep. So sort of a transition that sort of starts and moves like a clock face. And again, some of these will have different options as well. We've got the cloud. I actually really like that. That's really cool. The cloud, sort of an animated burst in the middle of the screen. We've got curtains. We got fans. We've got so much stuff in here. It's amazing. But again, I think it's a bit like when we started, or certainly when I started making videos with Windows Movie Maker. There were lots of fun transitions and it was really tempting to use them all, but we kind of want to think about when we'll be using these. So fractal, that's kind of cool too. Iris. So again, a circle from the middle working its way out. Linear. Parallel zigzag, and we've got a horizontal and a vertical option of that one. Sinus 9. That's interesting. Spiral. Square. But stripes. I could do this all day. I'm not going to, but let me just get this out of my system. As a watercolor option. That's pretty cool. And zigzag, horizontal, and vertical. So we've got all those options. Again, you could play for the end of time, but I think what we will do for the moment, what was a nice one? Let's go back to fractal. And I guess the other thing that I probably want to do here is, now that because the Luna Wipe has so many different options in here, I'm actually going to go back into the three dots in the scene transitions, this little menu here, go to rename, and I will say, I'll just call it Fractal Luma Wipe, so I know which one it is. So that's the thing. If you're going to use like 3 or 4 different Luna Wipe effects in a presentation or a stream or a show or a podcast or something, you actually do need to come in and add each one of those in here separately so we can use them later on. Okay, I think that was the bulk of them. We do have the stinger, and the thing about stingers, and I do have a stinger. I created a stinger. I need to go and find it on my computer really quickly, but I'm pretty sure I remember where I put it. Stinger. There we go. It's always good to name these things. So the thing about the stinger is that The stinger essentially is a video that will play between the transition of two scenes. And it's often really useful if you actually incorporate some transparency into the stinger so that you can see a little bit of the old scene as it leaves and a little bit of the new scene as it comes in. I've created a stinger a really, really long time ago. I say long time ago, probably 3 or 4 months ago in DaVinci Resolve. And if you do want to see how that works, that video is on the Learn live streaming channel. You can certainly check that out. I will focus predominantly on how this works in the OBS sense today. But if you want to see how it's built, the thing about this thing is only certain video formats really support transparency. Apple's QuickTime Movie, the MOV format does. Animated GIFs do as well, so that's potentially a really important thing to know. So think about the format you're actually creating these in and exporting these in. But essentially what we're going to do, let's go back into our OBS and press that button. And what we want to do is if I come down to my scenes transitions and go and add a new one, and this time we will use the stinger option, and I will call it JL logo stinger because that's what it is. And here we've got to actually sort of specify the video file, and I have got that here. And I guess like the thing that you may notice about this is that I've got the movie files, the MOV files, which are the QuickTime files, and I've also actually compressed them in Shutter Encoder. And again, if you check out that video on the channel, it'll explain how to do that. The reason that I've brought these into WebM format is because they're tiny. Like this is the QuickTime movie versions are like gigabytes. They're massive, and they're only like, I don't know, 15 seconds long. So in fact, if I hover over this, you'll see that this one is 1.08 megabytes. That's the WebM format that's been compressed. This version is 1.15 gigabytes in size. And again, to be really honest with you, my computer could probably handle that fine, but it's a good idea to compress it. All right, I just want to make sure that I've actually got the other version of OBS visible so I'm not missing your comments as we go through, because I have a feeling there's a whole bunch of them. Hello, Ernesto. Thank you so much for joining us. Great to have your company today. So basically what happens here is we've got our video and it's going to be the stinger. It's going to show the A scene. It's going to cross to the B scene, and we get to specify when this happens. And we can do this as time or frames. I should know this, and I don't really know this, so we're going to experiment in real time. But I'm just going to imagine that it's probably 15 frames in. And we can play with all these different settings. Again, if your video also has audio, you might want to think about how that works, whether you're listening to that audio as the transition plays or whether that's off. So again, those are the same 3 audio settings for audio monitoring that we have in our normal audio settings. But we do also have fade options in there as well. All right, so I don't know that is actually the frame at which this changes, and I could probably look this up, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. But you can specify that in time or in frames. I'm just going to try at 15 frames. I have a feeling it might be something in that ballpark. Again, I've got the original file. I could go look this up, but essentially now, with that on, if I click on Scene A, we can see the transparency. It goes out. I don't think that is the right point, and I'd probably need to actually go in and check where that is. In fact, I don't know, can I do this in real time? Can we make an estimated guess? Let me just see if I can figure this out. So what actually happens here is that we have the white. It comes in at some point. I think this has actually stopped responding, so let me just play it through. It gets smaller. We can see the section that is currently black here. It will be transparent for a little while, and then it actually switches so that in fact, it switches around here. So this is only 5 seconds long, so I'm gonna sort of guess. And again, it'd be a good idea to actually do this for real somewhere along the line. But I'm guessing that it happens somewhere. I guess what we're seeing when it's completely black is that inversion. So I wish you could tell me exactly what frame that was, but it's sort of at the 2-second mark. So I don't know. Maybe I should actually go into that project and see what that is. Let me just see if I can do that. We'll bring up DaVinci Resolve in the back end. And I must admit, I love DaVinci Resolve, but I'm not an expert in it. It has taken a little bit of time to actually wrangle that. But let me check in with the comments while all that's happening. Hello, Roy. Hope you're having a great week. Saeed is saying, I think you should use the use track a matte option in the settings. I've never used that, so tell me more about that, Saeed. All right, let me just see if I can bring this up. So logo stinger, and I actually have a number of different versions of this, which will no doubt make this even more confusing, but I'm pretty sure it's this one here. So let me just go back to my screen share. So this is in Adobe, not Adobe. That's a terrible word in my world. I don't use that. I'm so sorry, DaVinci. So this is DaVinci Resolve, and this is actually a composition in Fusion. And I can go in here, and I think this is probably where the magic happens. Just, okay, so. So probably around there, which I'm guessing is frame 50. Okay. I think Ernesto's laughing at my mention of the company that should not be named. It's funny because Adobe Australia used to do this thing on Twitter on a Friday afternoon where they would ask quiz questions, and if you won, you got merch. And I've got so much random Adobe merch, and I don't even use their products anymore. It's the weirdest thing. All right, and and Tech Troublemaker is saying, I can't believe you used the A word. Yes, I know, it's a terrible word. Yeah, and it's funny because I know people, like I've had teachers and trainers and colleagues that are so deeply invested in that ecosystem, and I don't trust them anymore. I really don't. But anyway, let's get back into OBS. So I'm pretty sure around frame 50 is where I want the magic to happen. So, and what I might do, just because all these video thumbnails that I'm using as examples are so dark, I'm actually just going to create Scene E, and let's, and you can see it's already doing its thing because I created a new scene. I'm just going to put in a color source, and I don't even care what color this is, but let's make it really bright and very not subtle. You know, something like that. Okay. That's really not subtle, is it? All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to the cut temporarily. I'm going to switch over to the stinger. And now, again, because so much of the stinger is black and white, in fact, let me, you know, I feel like I'm being so indecisive today, but just roll with it, everybody. Let's just put in another scene that'll just be a solid color as well. So I just want two contrasting colors that aren't black and white, essentially. So let's come in, and I don't know what that is, but that'll do, sort of a fluoro pink. So now if I go back to my logo stinger, I press on Scene E, it'll bring it in, we'll see the pink. Eventually you'll see that it actually changed to yellow at some point. So again, you might want to tweak how that works, but essentially that's how that works, is that we can do that. And again, you know, if I were to turn this off temporarily, and you know, maybe I bring in a different image. What have I got in here? Affinity. I'll throw a random photo of me in here. So now we'll go back to Scene E, and we'll do the stinger. And you'll see that, you know, that transition has happened. And it's so useful that that we know what that frame is where it actually transitions. So that's really good to know. I am kind of curious now, Saeed, and maybe this is a conversation we can have offline, but I've never used this ever. So please tell me more about that. All right, let's check in the chat. We have gone on a bit of a tangent because I did use the A word, as Roy said. Ernesto writes, yeah, my media class at Arizona State uses Adobe as an option, though. They also recommend GIMP for photos. I've been loving the Affinity Suite, and I don't remember exactly how much I paid for it, but it's sort of the lifetime license for version 2. And it costs less money than I spend on takeout food in a week. And it's so good. Like, occasionally there will be some features that aren't the same, and I have to do a bit of a workaround to figure that out. But otherwise, I do find it's really good, and it sort of has their publisher, their designer, which is sort of the equivalent to Illustrator for vector stuff, and they've got the photo app as well. So yes, it is the joy of time zones. Ernesto's telling me it's Friday over there. It is Saturday morning here in Australia. We are here in the future. And Ernesto also says, who's that guy? So that's just another photo of me randomly. I don't know why I've got that weird expression on my face, but it is what it is. This is kind of the problem I have with these demos, though. I probably need to think through a little bit more, because I just grab random things and throw them in. So I guess just to recap, if we go back to this version of OBS, so we had our cut and our fade transitions. Again, they're the most basic. I'd probably, for 99% of people, I'd say live on the fade option because it is so elegant. But we do also have the swipe and the slide, and Saeed articulated the difference between those two. Fade to color might be good. Again, especially, I'd probably go with fairly neutral colors if you could. The fractal wipe, the Luma wipes give you so many options. They're quite fun, but again, probably want to use them sparingly. And then the stinger can be great for a transition. And again, just sort of that, in fact, I'll turn it off for a second. But the idea that, you know, maybe there is a point at which you actually want to tell people, you know, what show they're watching, or just have some branding in there that's like that. And the thing that pains me about that stinger is I've spent so much time working on it. I haven't actually incorporated it into any of my real stream scene collections yet, so I definitely need to do that in the future. But we've got some great fun options here. So the thing about this, though, is by default, whatever we select over in scene transitions is going to be there for everything. And that's potentially going to be incredibly annoying. So I want to talk to you about a few different options that we can do to maybe be a little bit more selective about this. So if I go back to fade as my default, and maybe if I want to switch to scene E, or scene F actually, I can actually create an override here by right-clicking on scene F, and I go to transition override, and for this one only, I'll do the JL stinger. So all these other ones, they'll just be fade, 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 fade. And then when I go back to this one here, maybe I didn't do that correctly because it's not working. Let me try that again. I mustn't have clicked on it properly. Let me try that. All right, so if I go back to E, and then I go to F, it's still not working. Why is it not working? That's crazy. All right, what's going on here? Okay, it says it's on now. Actually, I might have done that to the wrong scene. Let me try this again. All right, I'm clearly out of my depth with that one. So Saeed, if you know the answer to that one, let me know. But that is weird because I assumed that would just work. So if I go transition override stinger, it doesn't do anything at all, which is very odd. Just want to say hello to Neil. Thanks for being here. And Saeed's talking to me about the track matte transitions. They work differently. They blend two scenes smoothly with an animated transition instead of a hard cut. However, your video file must be structured correctly for it to work. Okay, that's good to know. So I must admit, I'm a little devastated that the scene transition isn't the transition override isn't actually working the way I wanted it to work. Maybe in fact, I'm kind of wondering if I right click on this now. No, because if I right click on it, it'll go to that scene. That's really annoying. I'm going to have to investigate that one. But another thing that we can actually do is that if you're working in studio mode, and the thing about studio mode is it gives you two previews. So program is the one that's going out to your audience. So if you're live streaming or recording or even using the virtual camera, this is the thing people are going to see. And whatever you're doing over here is what you're going to go to. So right now, I kind of need to actually click the transition button to move to the new scene that I've selected. But we do also have these great things called quick transitions. So if I wanted to add a new quick transition, I can click on this plus sign. I'll go with the JL Stinger. And then once that's an option there, instead of clicking this transition option, I can literally just click on this one. And that will move to that one as well. So we do have that option there. So we can do that. We can have a whole bunch of different quick transitions here as well. I think there probably is a limit to the number that we can do, but let's maybe try the fractal luma wipe. So again, if I wanted to move to a different scene, I select the scene. I can click on the button of the transition that I want to use, and it'll give me that effect. It is worth mentioning too that we can set up Stream Deck buttons for all of the stuff that we do in studio mode. I personally don't use a lot of studio mode, so I'm curious if you guys use that a lot or only occasionally, but it is definitely an option. And if you have someone who is like a producer that is operating a stream for you, it can be a really, really awesome place to work from. So and I must admit, I should say too that there was a studio mode button in the controls behind me, but I'm kind of obscuring that panel, but it is definitely there. So I guess the thing I am wondering though, there is a third method I want to talk to you about, and I kind of wonder if that isn't interfering with the transition override that I'm trying to use here. So the other thing, and again, if you haven't already, you can check out the links to all of this goodness over at the OBS Obsessed newsletter. You can head over to johnlacey.com/OBS news. I say as I throw my mouse off the desk. Let me just grab that. Really ruining the green screen magic by sticking my head out at the side of the frame, but you can definitely check that out as well. So you can definitely do that, and we can come in here, and I guess the thing I wanted to show you here is that we have, in addition to that, we also have a thing called the transition table. So if I go, and I probably already got this open, I've got this great plugin called Transition Table, and essentially you can download this and install this, and it'll give you a table where you can say, when I'm moving from one particular scene to another scene, I want to use this type of transition. So I've already got this installed in OBS, so let's head back over there. If I pick the right version, there we go. So once you have installed this, this will appear under the Tools menu. So you can go to Tools, Transition Table. And now if I want to go from Scene E to Scene F and use the Stinger transition, I can do that. And again, I can adjust the duration for that, and I can go Set. And maybe if I want to go from A to B, and I might use the Luma wipe for that one. Okay, I'm hoping those actually stuck. Let me just have a look at that for a second. Okay, cool, they are there. So essentially we can do this between going into different scenes. So now if I go from scene A to scene B, we should have that lunar wipe. It is kind of subtle, but you'll notice that this only goes in one direction. So if I wanted the same transition from going to B to A, I'd have to actually create that here as well. But it is quite elegant. And now if I go from scene E to scene F, we will get our Stinger transition. So this is a really great opportunity for you to sort of mix these up a little bit. So You know, depending on what you want, it's a great opportunity to actually come in here and select different scene transitions for different arrangements. So, you know, maybe it makes sense to have a particular type of transition when you move from one scene to another, but maybe not for all of them. And this is actually quite elegant. There is a matrix option. So that's a different way of working. I personally prefer the table. So I'd probably come in here and say, okay, when I'm moving from scene C to scene D, for example, I might want to use the swipe. I don't really remember what the swipe looks like, but we don't really need to know that for our purposes. Let's click the set button. And now if I go from C to D, we've got that swipe there. So you can see once you've got that, you can introduce a lot of different ways of doing this. So, and it looks like Said's done some research and came to the same conclusion that I did, which was that the transition table may break the transition override. So again, if you don't want to work this way, and it's probably a good place to start, don't install that straight away unless you're really thinking that's where you want to go. Just turn that off and just work with the override, because the override is very simple. It's very elegant. And it might be enough, but I must admit, I do love the transition table. I think that's really quite amazing. So we can do that. And obviously I'm using a lot of dummy images here today to sort of give you a sense of, you know, just moving between these with different transitions. So you would have real elements in here and they'd be much more interesting, and you'd have cameras and audio and media and probably browser sources and other fun things. So that would be a different thing entirely. But I guess the other thing that we did note when I went to add some other scene types is we have move, we have doom. We'll talk about doom later. Let's start with the move plugin. And I know I've done this pretty recently. So if I go to scene E, scene F, for example, right now this has got the that transition in there. But what I kind of want to do, I'm going to right click on scene F and I'm going to duplicate it, and I will say, I'm actually going to call this move 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some text. I'm hoping I selected the right option, but we'll find out in a moment. Okay, cool. Yes. So I'm going to go move plugin. I'm actually going to bring in a color source. And I'm just going to make this, I'll call it banner. I'll make it black. What I do want to do is I want it to be a lot smaller than this. So I'm going to give it a height of maybe 400. Okay, cool. I'm going to move this underneath. And I'm going to move myself on top because I'm vain like that. So here we can see that we've got these elements. And to be honest, I think I might even... Because the great thing about working with this, and I'm going to go with a different font for this text that just says move plugin. And as much as this is the hypocrisy of it, as much as I don't like Adobe as a company, I do regularly use Open Sans as a font, which is technically one of theirs. So, I mean, they have done some good things in their time. But anyway, let's go extra bold. Let's make this really bold, and I might even make this a little bit bigger. So I'll give it a size of 300 and go OK. And again, keep in mind that you can sort of right click on this and go to our transform options, and we can send it to screen or sort of center vertically or horizontally. So, you know, I can move that around as I like, but I think that'll do for the moment. So I guess what I wanted to mention, and I probably got a little bit distracted here. Let's go back to our wonderful browser tab over here. So the move transition is a function of the move plugin. This is a really cool one. And you've probably seen on previous shows, if you've been around for them, that we can set up a whole bunch of different filters to trigger movement in OBS. But this also does have a very simple transition type just called move. And all it really, I was going to say all it really does, what it does, because it's kind of cool and really impressive, is that it'll actually just look at the elements within your frame and just animate them. It'll do all the calculations. You don't need to worry about anything. You don't need to worry about frame rates. You don't need to worry about anything at all. So I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm just going to call this move 2. And maybe here I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Move this down a little bit. And I might even start moving this over here. And I'm going to duplicate this again. And we'll go move 3. And I'll take this right off the screen. And again, you probably want to do this with a little bit more finesse than I'm doing right now, but it is what it is. And I'm actually going to make this, if I can select it without selecting everything else, which might be a little tricky. I'm going to actually make this, can I resize that? That's annoying. All right, I'm going to lock everything that isn't my move text because it's getting on my nerves. And I'm going to drag this out so that the word move is really, really prominent. In fact, I'll probably make it even bigger than that. I might even put it off to the side. Again, I'm making stuff up here, so you probably want to finesse this a little bit more. But once we've done this, if I go in and add my move, and again, make sure you've installed the plugin, because if you don't install the plugin, you won't see this option in the scenes transitions. But if I add a new transition name called move, I can go OK. This has an obscene amount of settings, and I've never used, I've never touched any of them. I'm very happy for it to roll with whatever it wants, but if you're particular about your transitions, you can come in and change the easing and the zoom and the positions and all of the things. I'm actually not going to worry about any of that. I'm just going to click OK, and now if I go back to move 1, you'll see that the elements that are being repositioned are actually moving themselves, and I've done basically nothing to make that happen. So like I've repositioned them, but essentially it's doing all the animation. It's deciding where that goes and how that goes. And the great thing about this is, you know, in this case, I might even I haven't locked that there. So potentially I could come in here and I could say, okay, I want to make me bigger in this part of it, and you'll see that it'll go from here to here to here. And you know, we've done basically nothing to make that happen. Like the plugin is doing all the heavy lifting. So, and this could be just a matter of repositioning elements. You could have things outside of the canvas come onto the canvas, or vice versa. In fact, I've mentioned this in previous shows, but this to this to this, and those are 3 different scene transitions. That's all the Move plugin doing it by itself. Like I've really done no exciting work to get there. So if you want something that's a little bit elegant, a little bit more streamlined, that is so beautiful. That is completely free. It is very easy to set up. And again, if you want to do that maybe in conjunction with some of those other things, we can do that with the transition table. So now if I want to move between move to move 2, and I'll set that, and then the only thing is I probably want to do this for a whole bunch of them so that they can move in either direction, because that can be really, really useful. So even if we go back to move 2, and this is probably the point at which the matrix would probably make more sense. So maybe I should do that. Let's go into the matrix. So if we go from here, okay, so I think I thought I could actually enter, oh, there we go. So I've got to make this a little bit larger so I can see what I'm moving between. So basically here, I could come in and I'll say, if I want to move between any of these, I kind of want these all to be movements. So although it doesn't look like I can actually set these values here, it's just an overview. So I still need to sort of manually set these up over here. So if I go move 1 to move 2, And I guess the other thing I've noticed about that is if I go out of it and go back into it, that's when I see what's actually there, which is kind of more useful. So once you set this up and you've got the different ones, so again, we go from scene A to scene B, we've got a bit of a Luma wipe in there, C to scene D, we've got that, I don't know if it's a slide or a swipe, but it's one of them. And if we go from E to F, we've got the stinger transition. And I probably haven't done all the combinations for the move plugins, but essentially if I click on that one and then go to that one and that one, that's mostly working, but I haven't set up one for move 2 to move 1. So there's lots of possibilities, and you can make this visually quite dynamic and quite interesting by using different things. And you kind of need to think about, you know, your show structure more generally, just to see what would make sense and what would work. But like it could be possible for you to set this up in such a way that, you know, maybe you've just got different words moving on the screen. You could make a really simple sort of intro video for your stream or your show or whatever, just in that fashion. Like that is something you could potentially do. And that's without getting into the filters, which we've covered on previous shows, so you can check that out in the archives. All right, I'm going to head back to my magical little article, if I can remember which one of these windows it's in, over here. Okay, cool. So, again, the links for all of this stuff is in this article, and I'll try and update this in the video description later too. So we've got the scene transitions doc, we've got our swipe, slide, stinger, fade to color, Luma wipe, and we've also got the stinger transitions. We've got the override. So again, if you don't have that plugin installed, the right clicking on the scene should let you override that easily enough. But if you don't, you do have the options of studio mode or the transition table plugin. I think the transition table plugin is amazing, and the fact that it's available for free is really, really cool. So we looked at the move transition. The one that I haven't mentioned yet is the Doom transition. So if you grew up playing this particular game, which I certainly did, this might be a little bit nostalgic. So again, this is just a plugin in the repository. You can check this out if you want. But once we've got that here, and I might even, I don't know, I might need to actually go into my transition table and just change some of this, but I've got to add them first. So again, if I go and add my scene transitions, I've actually got Doom and Doom Faithful. I actually don't remember seeing the Doom one before I saw the Doom Faithful one. So let's just try these out and see what they look like. So we're going to add the Doom one, click OK. So we do actually have a whole bunch of options in this one, which is cool. So if I go preview transition, you'll see that it's sort of, it melts the screen in a way that is reminiscent of those games. And this all happens very fast. So we could potentially slow this down if we wanted to, but we've got that there. So we'll go from Doom, and I'm going to come in and add the other one as well, which I think doesn't have as many settings from memory. Yeah, okay. So I'm guessing that Doom Faithful it doesn't give you any options really. It's just, it is what it is. Whereas the Doom version actually gives you a lot of parameters you can play with. So if we go back here, and if I go from, and let's do this in the transition table. So if I want to go from E to F, let me just try that. Scene E to scene F. And I can switch that to one of the Doom ones now. And go set. That'll actually override that. So we went from the stinger to the Doom transition. So now if I go down to scene E and then we go to F, you'll see that we've got that little pixely waterfall, if you like. So that's another option. I'm sure there are probably a lot of others out there in the plugin repository. If you know of any cool ones, by all means, let me know about that. That would be really good to know about. But I think in some ways, we just want to think about how and when we use our transitions, because like I said, I think we've all been guilty at different points in our lives of wanting to play with all the colors and all the settings. And I think that can be that can be interesting, but that can also be overwhelming, and that can be sort of fatiguing. So don't get too carried away, but certainly play with these. And I think really if you do have an elaborate stream and you do want to sort of think about working with different transition types, often the transition table is a really good option for that. I will need to do some investigation of the track matte transitions, which Said's been telling me about, which is really interesting. One thing I do want to actually pick up on that Said did say in the chat that I sort of skipped over earlier. He says studio mode is only for fixing stuff live. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I think often if you do have a producer that is doing stuff in real time, and you know, I think it's often a really good place for them to operate, because they can they can sort of preview the next scene and see, oh, we've spelt the guest's name wrong. Let me quickly jump into that before we get ready. So I think there are a few different uses of that, but I mean, for an individual person, I think you're right. I think a lot of it is just fixing errors. And again, you know, it's up to you how you use these transitions, but I just wanted to show you that because I think that's a cool thing, and I don't think that's always articulated, that we have those options with OBS that we can play with. And, you know, think about how you use them creatively, but think about how you use them tastefully as well. So thank you so much. Okay, Said's saying that's what I just paraphrased was essentially what he meant as well. So we're in agreement, which is probably pretty common. Don't forget, if you want to check out this magical article or subscribe to future articles, you can certainly head over to johnlacey.com/OBS news. And let me just see if I can throw that in the chat. OBS Obsessed newsletter. I really should have a Stream Deck key for this, and I will one day, but evidently not today. Let me just throw that in the chat, so you can definitely check that out with that URL. Again, I've got to press another button for that. OBS Obsessed newsletter, but don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, which is at Learn Live Streaming as well. If you do have specific questions about OBS, please let me know in the chat. I can't answer everything, but if it is something I do know something about, I will certainly attempt to try. And I'll be back next week, probably with the Learn Live Streaming live show. I'm sort of alternating my live shows in 2025, so that's more general, whereas this one is exclusively about OBS. That's sort of about live streaming more generally. So I hope you'll join me then, but have a great week, have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you again very, very soon.